Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of Northwest Quadrant Wealth Management E-News. We appreciate you joining us. Here we are again, and markets are still quite confusing. I would tell you that today, as we sit here on the 30th of July, we got a gross domestic product print that was the worst ever. So the U.S. economy shrank by the most ever in a single quarter. It was down essentially 33% year over year, which is the biggest decline ever. And we have corporate earnings that are down 40% year over year so far in this quarter. Yet stocks are really close to all-time highs. The Nasdaq's essentially at an all-time high. And so, as we said 2 weeks ago, this is one of the most difficult times to do what we do ever. It's very hard to allocate money in an environment like this. And so I'm reminded of a Warren Buffett quote. He said that the less prudence with which others conduct their affairs, the greater prudence with which we should conduct our own affairs. And that is a very prescient quote for what's going on right now. There was a lot of very speculative behavior happening in the stock market, similar to what we saw in the late 90s, where people are talking about metrics that don't make sense. They're talking about the opportunity set or the price versus revenue, numbers that don't make a whole lot of sense to us for justification for buying certain stocks in the software space and different parts of the economy. We're also seeing behavior in the real estate market that is even crazier than we saw in the middle 2000s. And so we're seeing lots of behavior that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us. And so risk management is of vital importance right now. And that's what we're thinking about when we're managing your money. But don't kid yourself, whether it's us or anybody else. This is one of the most difficult times to invest money and asset allocate in history.
Speaking of asset allocation, we just wanted to talk about the situation today as it exists and how that interfaces with asset allocation. We're sort of in this perverse dynamic right now where bad news actually may be good news, and that's only as it relates to the stimulus specifically. The GOP and the House Democrats are pretty far apart, 1 trillion and $3.5 trillion respectively. How that is going to relate to the dollar, the closer you get to that $3.5 trillion stimulus, the weaker the dollar is going to be. And ultimately, the greater the outperformance of foreign domiciled businesses will be. If you look at your portfolios over the past really 3 months, barring the NASDAQ, international developed and emerging market stocks have really led the performance. That's not to say that US stocks haven't also been up, but you're really starting to see international outperformance persist. And we expect that to continue depending on the degree of stimulus. If the House Democrats get their way, the dollar is going to significantly weaken. Here we are at a 6-month low in the dollar index, and we, again, expect that to persist. It's just really a question of magnitude at this point. And so within your portfolios, you're finally really seeing international drive performance. I know it's been dead money for so long, but this may be finally the opportunity for international diversification to really play out, and we'll be watching those stocks closely.
Yeah, so this continues to be about timing. I mean, ultimately, the U.S. economy is doing miserably bad right now, and the only reason stocks are doing as well as they are and the housing market's doing as well as it is because of government stimulus. And we're probably going to get a second round, but it can't go on indefinitely. Because markets won't tolerate it. And so, expect volatility. There's no way that we're not going to see volatility. When we look out later in the year, we still think there's more layoffs, especially white-collar jobs, higher-paying jobs. And so volatility is here to stay. But as they say, you can't fight the Fed, and that's not what we're going to do. We're not going to make some binary all-in or all-out decision. If you have some questions about your situation or your portfolio, don't hesitate to give our office a call. That number is 800-743-0988. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.